Welcome back to Living with a Classic, and I'm here with the XJC coupe, which has gotten a color change. It is fern gray now, and it's pretty much ready to start putting it together. I've done a lot of things that I haven't really shown just because I've done a lot of it before, but now we're getting ready to put the engine in. I thought now we'll really start with the whole series on putting this car back together. We filmed when it was taken apart, and it was at the paint shop. It's gotten back. Sometime we're probably going to have a little talk of what happened with all of that, but it's looking good now. I've had a detail friend come over. He's the one who did my Rover P6, if you remember, and he's done a couple things. Still has a couple panels left to do, and the wings aren't on it, and the bonnet now for putting the engine in, but it's looking really good. So we'll do a little walk around. I'll show you that engine bay is all good and ready to go. I put in the IRS not that long ago, and that's all been painted and put together and cleaned and polished. It looks really, really good. Front suspension, same thing. As a fast road kit from Simple Performance with the lowering springs and everything in it. So it's going to be a really, really cool car with fuel injected engine, 5-speed manual, fast road kit. It's going to be great. So let me show you what's been going on. Engine is pretty much ready. I have earlier mounted the transmission to the engine and put a clutch in. I filmed that, so I'll show you guys that in a little bit. All that's done. What's left to do is put the starter on, which I've painted. So it looks really nice. And then, yeah, we'll see if the engine comes in. Hopefully it won't be difficult. And you know, with everything being freshly painted, it's a little scary. But hopefully it's going to go well, and maybe, you know, next, a little bit later tonight, the engine will be in. At least that is my plan. So to an untrained eye, it might not look like much, but there's hours of work to get to this point. And here you can see some of the result. If you want to say like detailing and polishing paint, if you want to put that in 3 stages, we're at stage 2 with this door. It needs the final stage, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Same with this panel up here. And the rear wing is in stage 1. It's a little bit left to do, but he's going to come back next week to finish all of that. If you have a look back here, the rear suspension is in place. Still need to put the radius arms in. You can see the beautiful suspension from Simple Performance. We have calipers been gone through, everything is painted. I mean, it's hard to see when it's in here, but everything is just nice and cleaned up. This car was also on wire wheels earlier with like real wire wheels hubs. So it's all been brought back to original with new bearings everywhere. And that's all been done. I've done all of the undersealing and rust proofing, filled any cavities with wax and all that. I've also done where the fuel tanks are going to go. So you see that looks really, really nice. The tanks are going to go in next week, probably. Interior-wise, all the floors have been rust-proofed as well. We're getting ready to put down a sound deadening that's being glued down. And then we have new carpets and everything. But the next couple of weeks, they're coming to put the vinyl top on it. And once they've done that, I can put the windows in and then really do the interior, start putting things back together. I will probably start, which may be the next video, we'll do blower motors, fuse boxes, and put the dash in and just start connecting things up, because that can be done before anything else. Over here, same thing, everything has been cleaned up. We have the Simply Performance lowering springs here, and I mean this is just some dust. Yeah, it's all back together. Adjustable shock absorbers, calipers have been gone through, ball joints, everything, new bearings, different hubs up here as well. The discs were pretty much new on the car before, so they're going back on. And in here, everything is nice and painted and shiny. I have painted the heat shields up there, and they're pop riveted back into place. And everything else is pretty much ready to go. But I really want to get the engine in, because it will, you know, give me some space in the workshop, and also feel like a big milestone. After that, you have battery box needs to go in. The wiring's been hiding back here, put that back. Everything else, you know, brake booster and all that needs to go through. But here is the engine sitting all together. But let's go back in time and I'll show you the replacement of the clutch and putting everything back together. Anytime you have a car with a manual transmission out, it's a good time to replace a clutch. And we're doing so much to the car, of course we're doing that. We have a new Borg and Beck unit here, pressure plate and everything, of course. So I have thoroughly cleaned the surface of the flywheel. It's in really good shape. And, you know, degreased it and everything. So we're good to go. On this particular one, it says gearbox side. So we know that way it goes out. And I have a clutch alignment tool, which we're just putting part of it on now. Like so. And then there is part here that easy lines up perfectly. And then the clutch is centered. Then we have a new pressure plate here as well, which I realized I have not degreased the surface. I'm going to do that. Just some brake clean. I'll do it here. Sorry, off camera a little bit. Dry it off with a rag, and then we can put that on. All nice and clean. And there we go. And you're always checking that the clutch is there. Then when you start tightening it down, you have to make sure that that can slide in and out easily. That way you know it's all lined up. So you can get the bolts here. I'm going to put one of them in right now, finger tight, and just to hold everything in place. And then I'm going to get a little bit of Loctite on them. Not using any crazy stuff, but you know, you want to be able to get this out again. However, you don't want these to come loose. I've looked through all the manuals. I actually can't really find a specific torque spec for it, but we'll use a German torque spec of Guten Tight. There should be no problem at all with a little bit of Loctite on it as well. Why do these always clog up? You always have to bring a pick. Like that. You'll have no problem getting that off again. But this is a good quality clutch, so there really should not be any reason to get this off again. Just gonna go around, tighten this all down evenly, make sure that the alignment tool still slides in and out the whole time, and then we'll get ready to mount the transmission. It's all tightened down now, and I can still get the tool in nicely, so that in the crank itself, and then you see, no problem at all. So that's going to line up really nicely with the transmission. So I'm going to get that out. It's sitting on the other side of my shop, and what we're going to do is have a look at the slave cylinder on there. It's worked and everything, but I got a rebuild kit for it. Might as well just change the seals in it. And then, of course, I have a new throwout bearing as well. Should be nice and hot. I usually would use a line wrench, but my 11 mil line wrench has been missing since we did the XJ40 weekend project. But it was hot. This worked. So yeah, use line wrenches, but I don't know, one of mine's missing. That was such a chaotic weekend that we, two people working in a workshop, swapping out an engine. It ended up a lot of tools are not really where they should be. But that's actually the only thing I'm still missing is that one line wrench. So maybe it was thrown out by mistake or something. So I'll have to pick up some new ones. But that's why we applied some heat to get everything out. So you can't buy these, but you can buy a rebuild kit. It was working fine. But it's one of those things, it's a lot easier to take care of that now than later. I also have a new soft line for it, which we'll put on later. And let's see if we can get the bleeder undone now as well. Yeah. I'll leave the bleeder on there, but just want to make sure that that works. Let's see what we get in the rebuild kit before we start tearing it apart. We get a grommet, we get a washer, we get a seal, Alright, so just a warning that if it looks like that, you have the wrong kit. Alright. Hopefully it doesn't. I'm slightly worried that it... You know what? I might be mistaken. I think it's the master that you couldn't get a new one. Because look at that. It's this clutch master. I'm being a little silly here. That's what you get when you order parts a long time ago. So I think actually I have a new one of these. I'll have a look. So I think maybe it's the master you have to rebuild. Let me have a look through my stash of parts, see if I have a new clutch slave, because that'd be really good. Aha! I have one. I knew it was one of them that you couldn't get. So I ordered a rebuild kit instead. But that looks nice and lovely. Looks just the same, just have to move over that rod. And we have this little locking thing. Rod moved over. We'll fit that onto the transmission. I'll put on the new throw-up bearing as well. And then we're ready to mate that with the engine. Here's the old throw-out bearing. And can you hear that? It's pretty noisy. You can hear that in the car as well. And here is the new one. So I just knocked the old one off, and the new one just pressed on gently in the vise. And it's all the way in the bottom. So we'll install that into the car. Then I'm just going to wipe down the transmission a little bit, make it look a little nicer. Has definitely been rebuilt at some point in the past. It shifts very nicely, and you can see all the gaskets and everything look new on it. So we will put this together and mount it all together. Everything should be ready now to mount all this together. So we'll see how well that goes. It's not too heavy. This transmission at least. So we'll see. I think we'll set down the engine and then try and get it all on. We're almost there. Just need to line up that pin there. After a bit of wiggling and everything, it's on there now. Now I just have to put in the rest of the bolts and everything. I have the hard line for the slave cylinder. Then I can prepare the engine bay over here. Need to put in engine mounts and a couple other things, and then the engine should hopefully slide in nicely. So as you saw, the clutch is in. We have a new slave cylinder on there. And one of the last pieces of the puzzle here is putting on the starter. Nothing wrong with the starter in this car. It works really well. But it didn't look that nice. So hard to see here, but I just cleaned up the aluminum parts front and rear and painted the case. So it looks nice and presentable. So we'll button this in. Then I'm going to reposition my engine hoist and everything. And we're ready to try and lift it in. All right, so we're going to try and get the engine in. Shouldn't be too bad. 6 cylinders are pretty all right. The issue though is this is a manual. So if you don't know, this car has been a little resto modded. It has a manual Series 3 drivetrain. So it's fuel injected engine, 5-speed manual. And I haven't found a good way of getting the gear selector off because I can't really find the space to put that on when it's in the car. So that is sort of the one issue, the gear selector. Normally, if it was like an automatic, that would be there and you have a different angle going in. But we're gonna try. I have my leveler on it, all set up. So I'm gonna start positioning it. I have the jack underneath so I can sort of raise and lower, trying to figure that out. And hopefully it won't be too bad to put this engine in. We're almost where we can clear cross member and everything. I think we're at the clear level, so let's try get it forward a little bit. Try and line it up. All right. Just being extra careful, of course, because, well, yeah, it's all pretty freshly painted. Everything. So far, it's all lining up pretty well. We have, 30 centimeters or so, about a foot to the firewall. So I think we're going to go a little bit further, and then we'll have to start leveling it, lowering the transmission. We might need to raise the car a little bit, but let's see. I'm going to see if I can get a little further in. All right, let us start changing the angle. As you see, we're pretty close to the firewall here, but that's what the leveler is for. We're at the maximum angle, so we're cleared inside the transmission tunnel right now, and we just cleared over the engine mount. So I think we can start lowering it down. That will also bring it into the car more, and just being really careful. But that is the next step. I do have a jack in place ready to raise up the car if that is needed to help with angles, but so far, so good. we'll take it a little bit more forward. The one thing I may need to do is actually remove the engine mounts, because I think it may be tight with them. It's just because of that gear lever. We'll see. I'll lower it a little bit more and then make up my mind if I'm going to do that or not. I have one of the mounts removed, and that seems to be helping. Now I'm angling it back the other way to get the transmission up a little bit, and then at the same time we're lowering it down. It will go forward. So just gonna go back and forth like this a bit. Should at least begin to slide in. We're almost past the subframe with like the hump in the bottom of the sump, and we're still fine in there with the gear shifter. It's just a matter of going back and forth like this, and it, you know, sooner or later it will come into place. Especially removing an engine, always pretty easy. Putting one back in, it's always a little bit more difficult, and especially when you have things that are painted and nice, and you just want to be careful. The only thing I have knocking is the top of that gear shifter, somewhere in the transmission tunnel back there, and I'm not really too worried about that. But the XK engine is quite a long engine, and honestly the V12 is not more difficult to put in. It is the length of the engine and the way that both of them have that hump that needs to go over the cross member. That is sort of the challenge. But it's a lot easier on here compared to like a Mark II or something. That's a lot worse to do. Okay. I'll show you guys over here. We're sliding past the engine mounts here, which is really nice. So you see the mount that's removed there. So we're going past those, which is really, really good. And I think we'll lower a little bit more. Then I realized I did not remove, there's an access panel where the gear shifter goes into the car. I'm gonna remove that so we can start seeing and guide that into place. But I think can lower it just a tad more. It's really a slow and steady wins the race sort of thing. And now I'm going to change the angle again. We're pretty much past here. But I'm going to take a little quick break, and I'm just going to remove that panel in the car, and then that way we can see the top of the transmission. With that removed, we have a little bit more access down there. And there's our little transmission. So we'll continue putting the car in, and now there's a bigger hole for the gear shifter to come up through. Because both lifting hooks are on one side, we're a little crooked. However, gear shifter knob is starting to stick up from behind there. So that's really good. I'm going to continue my leveling. We almost have it completely flat. And then I think I'll have to sort of manhandle it over to get it on this engine mount and then set it down on that and then lean it over onto the other side. Oh, we're so close. Just slid on there. Let me show you guys. We're on. Now let's see the other side. Yep, so if we set it down now, it should end up on that mount as well. There we go. It's all installed. This is all completely loose now. It's sitting on its mount, and there is a jack, or not a jack, sorry. There's an axle stand. You can see it right down there, that blue thing, under the transmission. And I'm going to do the mount for the transmission a different time, but for now, the engine is in, and that was the goal for today's video. Well, it's getting late here, but that went really well. So it was nerve-wracking putting a big engine in when everything's painted and everything, but didn't hit anything, didn't scratch anything, so a huge success. Anyways, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to enjoy seeing the rest of this car put together. I'm working on it every single day now until it's done. So if you want to see the rest of it, let me know down below and I'll make those videos for you guys. Anyways, until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic, and I'll see you guys soon.